I'd like to call this special meeting of Cherokee Village City Council to order. Please join me in the pledge to our flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us have a moment of silent prayer, please. Amen. Clerk, would you please call a roll?
Roland? Here. Christophe?
Here.
Hill?
Here.
Heffley?
Here.
Ishmael?
Here.
Thompson?
Here.
Smith?
One more time, Rob.
Smith? Here. Martin?
Here.
Quorum established.
Thank you. Next item is approval of tonight's agenda, which is the one-item agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes, agenda is approved. Next, any comments on that singular agenda item?
Yes.
Karen P.E.G, resident. I just wanted you to consider for this budget the idea of trails. We already are interested in trails. We got the thing going on this season with hopefully getting that one trail finished from the grant. But what I'm asking you to consider is setting aside money for either grant and or the ability to purchase land cheaply while we can, to have trailheads or to make parks to go into trails or what have you with the land that SID owns. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. To address what you brought up, the American Rescue Plan funds, one of the criteria under that has to do with improving health of citizens in your community. I don't know about land. I don't think land purchases would meet the criteria, but the current project of the extension of the Tohai Trail would fit into that. So those funds can be used to supplement the grant, and that's my intent. So when it comes to that time, I'll be presenting a resolution to the council to approve it. Okay, moving on to the 2022 budget. Department heads are here if you have questions of them, but Mr. Smith met with them individually, and everybody is aware that we took a substantial decrease in revenue as a result of the litigation, and consequently all were asked to trim the budget as best they could. I think anyone who's in business realizes that the biggest expense one has is in personnel, and so there have been some personnel reductions, some brought by retirement, some brought by layoffs, and some by not filling the job vacancy when it occurred. The Budget Committee met several times and got feedback and went back to I went back to the department heads and told them some other things that they could do or what we're asked them to do, and which they did. Each of you got that sheet about potential budget issues that might occur in the coming year, or actually maybe in the coming 2 years. I'm just going to hit on a couple of things. Increased fuel costs, which might happen, hopefully not. We budgeted for $3.50 a gallon. I hope it doesn't go above that. But as I was telling one of the other council members, I don't know what year it was, but it could have been 2017 or 2018, but gas prices were way up, and that's what we budgeted, and they went above $3.50. I think it was up around $3.75, if you remember. I don't know what year that happened. Another issue is equipment, vehicles as well as equipment, particularly in the street department. They're operating with a lot of used equipment. I don't think there's been anything new purchased out there for quite a while in terms of really functional working equipment. I'm going to say the P.E.G mill was probably the last big equipment purchase, but I'm sure we're in need, and this was brought up before Mr. Zukowski took over. Mr. Kylo had presented, this was prior even to the conclusion of the litigation, he presented some requests for equipment pertaining to trucks. Of course, he's good about looking for used stuff that has a limited amount of hours on it. Another tractor to replace one we have. That side mount bush hog that we use, we acquired that from Sharp County, and we've patchworked that thing together about every month. Sometimes it looks about every other week we're doing work on it. It's a valuable piece of equipment, but a whole new unit, tractor and bush hog mount, is well over $100,000. So that's just a couple items I'm just throwing out. And we do have, as you know, we have money in kind of a savings account, we call it. We have money in reserve account. We really don't want to touch that. Part of that monies are from the American Cares Act funds, and that's dedicated to go towards the cost of the new police trucks, which we'll be acquiring, and the other sizable amount is go towards purchase of a new fire truck. We had a prospective amount of over $300,000 for a new fire engine. Captain Deans has some other ideas. I don't know whether it be about that cost or a little less, but I think I indicated to you that those funds from the American Cares Act, I received an email about if that's been expended and what's going on. And it wasn't getting to go into a lot of detail, but I don't want us to end up having to return those monies. So it may be an issue that instead of our goal was 2023 to purchase a truck, we may have to be looking at it this coming year. But I don't have any more information, and it was just an email that was sent out by the Municipal League through the Department of Finance and Administration, and that's been probably, well, it was sometime back in November, and I haven't seen anything since then. Anyway, with that being said, you have a copy of the budget in front of you, so if you've got questions, now's the time. Mr. Martin.
Concerning the American CARES Act, where do I find that in the line?
You're going to have to either take that off or...
The American CARES Act?
Yes.
Where might I find that line item in the budget?
It's not in the budget. It's not a budgeted
Okay.
item. It's a special monies. It's sort of like the
But if
American
you want-
Rescue Plan funds.
Okay, but if you want to spend that money this year, shouldn't it show up here someplace as either? an
No, that would
expense?
be a special appropriation.
How much do we have?
Oh, that we got our. I think our amount was a little over 220,000.
And how much do we have allocated to the police cars?
Well, the police department was spending about 63,000 of that, I think, and I think it might have been a little higher than that because I figured it was 163 for the fire department.
Okay, okay. That's, I didn't know where that showed up.
Yeah, no, that funding will not be in the budget.
And I have some simple questions and not understanding some of their, we have a line item here that doesn't seem to be used at all. Municipal planning and development, I see $250 for the past couple of years. It doesn't seem to have ever been used. Didn't know if it's $250 isn't much, but I mean, that might be something they could use for petty cash someplace. And then DEM expense, I don't know what DEM stands for.
It's not D, it's supposed to be OEM.
Oh, okay, OEM expense, okay.
Yeah.
A couple, just little things, everything else was good. Nature trail, where is the nature trail? What are we calling the nature trail? Is there a physical address?
That's the extension on Toe High.
Toe High? Okay. And the last thing I thought might be an interesting thing to do, if I can find it. Just like it's nickel and dime things, but we do have the Welcome Center. And the Welcome Center costs us approximately $3,000 a year.
That's a wash.
Well, but I think, wouldn't it be better to leave that to the A&P Commission to do?
Well,
Take it out of their budget?
it's,
Because it is advertising and promotion, so.
we have to go through it has to go through the city
Okay,
account.
okay. Didn't know, I thought maybe that'd be
No,
something that they could be doing
We
instead.
can't put it through it's an audit thing.
Okay. And then commercial permit surcharge. Is that for anybody building a big building? such
What
as-
line item are you talking about?
I'm in planning and zoning, third from the last. It's not a big item, it's just, I didn't know what it was. Commercial permit surcharge, is that what we charge somebody that's gonna build?
Can
a
you
gas
ask that
station?
question for him?
That's a charge that's charged by the state on any new commercial buildings that are built.
See,
And it's 1% of the permit cost.
okay. And street department 401A, that's the turnback that they get, or no, that's an expense. What is street department 401A expense?
Retirement plan.
The retirement?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So it should be 401K or instead of?
No,
A?
it's a
There are several
401A.
different types of
Okay.
401 program. Mr. Thompson will probably speak on that.
That was simple.
That's all your question?
That's
Anybody
it.
else have any questions?
Mayor, I
Go ahead.
do. Excuse me. Okay, and before I even bring this up, anyone who knows me knows how heavily I have been with donations to our animal control. But has there conversation with the budget committee, or is it something that we need to look at, about doing away with animal control and letting one of the 501c3 step up and take that over?
There was a brief conversation in the budget committee about that when I would say they wanted to continue with this under the authority of the city.
Well, the reason why I bring it up, and like I said, anyone who knows me knows how much I care for the animal control. But when we are cutting essential employees and essential services within the city and still facing a large shortfall, I'm kind of curious as to what maybe that conversation with budget committee was.
Well, I think that due to the fact that the property, it doesn't really belong to us, it belongs to SID, and we're occupying it at their generosity, although I think we're paying $10 a year for it. And we've made a lot of improvements that how a 501c3 organization would be able to take that over. And the only expense that we have there is out of the salaries that we're paying for the workers. A lot of those donations take care of much of the other. I'm not sure, you know, that's a good decision. If that went that direction, it'd have to be a majority of the council decide that. That's a service I think the citizens want to have.
And don't get me wrong, I agree. I don't want to see animal control go anywhere. I'm just looking at, we're talking about cutting essential services, cutting essential employees, but yet we're keeping animal control. And I am having a little bit of trouble kind of rectifying that. And then I see on the list of potential budget issues is a replacement for animal control vehicles. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I just didn't know if that was a conversation that anyone on council wanted to have.
I do. I'm interested in it. What are the benefits of it being a 501c organization versus it
I
being?
don't know,
Oh,
did you hear that? There was a question that what would be the benefit of being a 501c?
Well, I mean, the other benefit for the city would be that it would no longer be an expense under us unless we somehow form some sort of partnership with them. And I don't even know if that would work. But it would simply take the expenses off of our lap. And then if a 501c3 wanted to turn that into actual shelter out there, it would be between them and SID as far as the property went.
okay.
Yeah, it would be removed from our budget.
Right.
And they'd be sort of on their own. That's a concern of mine also, is we're cutting back on essential services. Basically my concern is fire and response times. And it's not so much the fire issue as it is the response times of ambulances. And our fire department usually gets there before the ambulances do and perform life-saving treatment at times. We may lose some of that time, and if we're losing some of that time compared to temporarily shifting away from the animal control facility, I think that's unacceptable that we're going to do that.
Well, let's remind you, Mr. Christophe, the ambulance service is not under the city's auspices.
I'm not saying the ambulance service, I'm saying when the fire department gets there, and they normally do prior to, I can't see who's from the fire.
Mr. Deans, do you want to
Mr.
respond to
Deans,
that?
I can't see.
Sorry.
So,
Question.
well,
He's concerned about the response time.
my question is, the response times, is it not true that the ambulance usually gets there after the fire department?
I mean, depending on the location and more so depending on how active their day is. The ambulance has 4 ambulance bases, but they're scattered throughout Sharp County, from Cave City to Hardy. 3 of them are in our pretty immediate area. There's Ash Flat, Hardy, and here in Cherokee. But it just depends on how crazy of a day they're having, just to be honest.
So, residents in the Lake Omaha area, it would be a time constraint for an ambulance to get there, yet we're closing down an operation closed.
And it's a typical, we've looked this up before, because we've had people, I guess, file complaints in years past, several years past, about how long it took us to respond. There was a house fire, and driving the actual speed limit, it was 9 minutes to that part of it, from the base heart today, but, you know, it is going to change it as far as at a 24/7, 365 perspective. I'm not going to say it's not, but sometimes during the middle of the day, we were all down on this side of town doing training or work days or whatever, and it would be a similar response as to that. But I will add for your information, one spot, an additional one person would change how we need to operate. With what we've got left in this proposed budget, that's enough staff to staff 2 stations with 2 relief personnel. Theoretically, if I had one more, yeah, it takes 3 people to operate a station, 24/7. But you have to have relief personnel. You have people taking vacations, sick. I mean, you can't staff it effectively if you don't. So, you'd be looking at 3 people in order to effectively open one of those stations out there. Is what you'd be looking at. And that's a pretty good chunk.
To me, that seems important.
I believe.
Basically, not the response in a fire situation, the response in health.
Sure.
Because if we're not getting service there quickly by the ambulance, and they're performing life-saving equipment, for, treatments, that concerns me, that we're cutting that back, and we got an $87,000 budget in our animal control. And I'm an animal lover myself also. I hate to see that put on hold, but there are some of these groups that, when there was a transition into the new animal control, that were talking about taking things on their own, sort of. And maybe that's something we can look at and should have, prior to taking 87,000 going to animal control, but it's not quite that, because I think there's 22,000 in revenue, so.
I think there's also a clarification point, if I could, Mr. Mayor, that the salary in animal control, the salaries portion, we're spreading salaries from another position that is covering animal control and streets and P&Z, are we not?
Oh, no, we're reducing personnel. That's reduced our cost in the street and fire department.
Right, but when
And
we...
not filling vacancies, no, it's,
But but part of the 87 in animal control, more specifically, part of the 52 in the budget, is that not covering some salaries that were spread out in other departments
Well,
previously?
if you look at what it was the previous year, previous 2 years there.
Right, I'm looking at
But there's
that.
no change there. I mean, we appropriated money for that. I understand what you're driving at there.
No, right here,
Yeah,
here, and here, and now this is the proposed.
right.
I
Because you
know it's
added,
consistent with last year.
added a part-time worker in there, so that, from that year to the following year.
Okay,
That's why that jumped in 2021.
okay. So we're basically maintaining that.
Right.
Okay. It wasn't.
But, you know, in response to that issue, we haven't had anybody come forth with a proposal on how they would take this over and what kind of monetary backing they have. I mean, for us to truly consider that, we need something solid from some group or individuals that said, this is how we're going to fund this, and this is how we're going to operate it. And I think for the city council to make a prudent decision on it, we can always amend the budget. I mean, we don't have to hold up on this, because we need to have funds so we can operate. We don't want to be operating on the current budget going into 2022 whatsoever. And I don't like to have to cut staff either, but it's there. We've got to deal with it until we're able to restore some of those funds that we've lost. But if we get a proposal to operate that facility, and so the community then understands how it's going to be run, and it'll be more receptive, and issues of concern won't be so intense. I've been around the city council when there was a whole lot of furor raised about the facility, and I think at one time we had animal control and we dropped it, and then we brought it back, and then at that point it just kind of built upon itself. Mr. Martin?
How many firemen with $62,000?
I'm sorry, Mr. Martin, can you take that off when you speak,
Sorry
please?
about that.
Thank you.
How many firemen with $62,000 put into play?
Is it maybe 30?
One and a half. So, is it, I remember animal control because I was one of the unfortunate people that started it, and I say that now because it originally was supposed to be animal control. And then it changed to, we have to save every animal on the planet, and then it changed a little bit more strict again, and now it's at a happy medium where that isn't happening anymore. But I don't think it's our duty to be saving. I'm more concerned about citizens than I am about citizens' animals or animals. You know, and it's not my fault or any citizens in my ward's fault that people don't take care of the animals or they let them roam. Well, maybe they do let them roam and run and shouldn't be doing that. But I would rather support the citizens with the fire department, because I noticed there's a lot of lifts and help with the ambulance service. And the ambulance service, if we don't know, is asked the quorum court for $600,000 to re-justify themselves, because they were also talking at one time about closing the station here in Cherokee Village. And they were at a meeting last month of the quorum court. So the quorum court seems like they're going to address their request, so that's going to temporarily put them out of a hot spot. But still, we have citizens that need just the lifting. I know a bunch of people personally that have used that service a great deal, because a 90-pound wife cannot lift a 120-pound husband when he rolls out of bed or or has diabetes and can't get around and things like that. So that's a service we are providing to our citizens, and I don't think we should cut that one short.
Well, but at the same time, Peter, I think we need to seriously sit down with Medicare, Medicaid, the various different insurance providers, where the city's fire department could then charge for a lift assist because
I'm with you on that.
we are dispatching personnel and involving personnel in a non-fire situation. And it is not the primary responsibility of the fire department to provide medical services. That is for the ambulance service. And to the point that you brought up as far as the ambulance service, contemplating closing down Cherokee Village, I would be more than happy to sit in on that meeting because we still remain the third largest city in 3 counties, and they have 3 other ambulance service stations in this county. And this city is the largest city in 3 counties. So if they're going to shut any station due to personnel or costs, they need to seriously consider the fact that there are other stations within the county that don't cover the number of citizens in concentration that the city of Cherokee Village does. But that's for another venue. But you can communicate that back to the ambulance service. But we need to look at, as part of this problem of lift assist, is that there is going to have to be at some point a charge involved for dispatching a fire truck and fire personnel to that location.
And
It's
I agree
going to
with you
have to come
100%.
about.
Yes, I think there should be a little bit of leeway. If it happens once, fine. If it happens twice, fine. But after that, we charge them whatever it costs to.
We're not going to
Because it's not a fire service,
well,
it's
and
more of a-
I don't want to get out in the weeds on that issue
Yeah.
because we're talking about approving a budget.
Right.
And so let's come back to the issue at hand for this meeting, because we're not going to go end up solving ambulance issues or lift assist issues. We're not going to solve those issues tonight. What we are going to have to do is look at how we can put forward a budget to City Council in 2 weeks that makes sense, that is reasonable. I understand the issue that's been raised by Councilman Rowland and as well as Councilman Christophe about the consideration that we might look to the possibility, if we are approached, as the mayor has pointed out, by a 501c3 qualified entity, that we may consider putting that responsibility over to another entity or find some ways to cut further, within the facility. But at this point, I do believe that we can carry forward with what we have based on where we are currently. And if the city is approached, if there is a qualified entity that would step forward to that, then we can certainly consider that. But I would also point out, after 9/11, back in 2001, Independence County, the county immediately to our south, was approached by the family of one of the stewardesses that was on Flight 93. They brought to the table $200,000 proceeds from her insurance policy. And that was the seed money that they challenged the rest of the community of Batesville to create a 501c3 in the animal shelter down there. That gives you some scope of understanding that 20 years ago, it took somebody stepping forward with seed money of $200,000 to start that process. So I'm not saying that it's going to require the same level at this point, but it's not something that we're going to solve in a 1 or 2 or 5 hour budget meeting. It is something that we can put on the agenda for consideration as we go forward. And as the mayor said, we can amend this budget according to the municipal league rules, and we can reallocate dollars that if we determine that a particular area of the budget can be adjusted downward or upward, based on change, circumstances that change during the fiscal year, then we can follow that process. And I think that the points raised tonight are very valid, but are we going to sit here and alter the budget as it stands now when we have no group that has stepped forward and there is no plan in order to do that?
Okay,
We have a department head that has said he can manage 2 fire stations, and we can fully, man those and move forward with this. I agree wholeheartedly that we can try and consider some further adjustments within the budgets, but are we going to do that tonight?
the suggestion was brought up, and I don't think he said one way or the other to keep it. I'm saying, let's get rid of animal control and put the money.
Why would we have to wait on a group to confront us and come forward with a plan? Why not do away with it and have them come up with a plan and come and to council?
So that way we could use that money someplace else in the budget.
Mr. Heffley.
Thank you. So, beating a dead horse here, it sounds like, but with Councilman Rowland, I agree with that as far as the idea with the, animal control side of it. But we're not gonna get anything done tonight, like Councilman Thompson said. I think that we should definitely consider this at a later time and review this later. And then I think we should be responsible to some extent or another, because it is our responsibility, this entire thing here. And see, and I'm ignorant, so I apologize, to what 501Cs are even in this area, but I do think we should seek that out later and present these numbers to them and see who would be able to match up to this and take that on. And then at that point, decide if we want to move forward with that. But anyways, this is my 2 cents. I think that's something we should look at later, but we're not gonna, I don't think we can get anything done tonight. So.
Well, educate me on the budget real quick. First of all, we don't have to pass a year's worth of budget. We can pass 90 days worth of budget.
No, sir, I will educate you on that.
Yeah, educate
The
me.
municipal league requires a municipality to have their annual budget in place as we commence the new year. That has been
That has to be in
pursued,
place by February.
that process has been followed for the 7 years that I've sat here on council.
Correct.
So that was something that previously had been drug out into the calendar year by previous administrations. That was put to a rest to be in compliance with the municipal league by Mayor
But the
Stokes.
municipal league does not, it's no compliance. Municipal league is an organization that gives you well, this is what could happen. They're a teaching organization. They are not the law. The law states that the budget has to be done by February and in place. But we can pass a budget of a quarter of this and run it for 4 months, and then in 3 months, add another quarter, and in 3 more months, add another quarter. That's possible to do. It's not impossible.
And Peter, yes, it is possible.
Okay, that's all I need to
It
hear.
is possible, and I drive a Ford truck, and it's possible for me to drive a Chevy truck.
Correct.
It's possible to pass this budget in its entirety tonight, and in 2 months, amend it.
And it's also possible that when it's passed in its entirety, portions of it can be spent in its entirety the minute it is passed. There is no time constraint on when it's being released. So, if you pass a budget of $1 million, it can be spent all within the first month. It could be spent, not will be spent, but it could be
Mr.
spent.
Martin, you're exaggerating.
No, I'm not exaggerating.
That's not going to happen.
I know it's not going to happen, but it could happen.
Let's get back. Hey.
I'm sorry. All I am saying is, we do not have to pass a year's budget because we have all sorts of things happening.
Under my administration, we've always done that way, and I'm not interested in waiting until the first of the year.
And I agree with you. And I don't want to change your plans, but I just don't want to.
So what's your point?
My point is, you're not absolute. You're saying things that sound absolute, but you are not. So don't misguide people that don't know the difference.
I'm not misguiding
Yes,
anybody.
that's a misstatement when you made it, and that's what.
Enough of that debate.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
So the 62 63,000? You said that's enough to, you said the 62,000 was enough to staff one and a half employees? Okay, so nobody wants to completely get rid of animal control for any amount of time while we're waiting on somebody. I don't see any, I don't see how we gain anything out of that. But if you have when you say 1.5 employees, I mean, you could adjust the budget and tell in animal control to give them another staff member. And then, I mean, I don't see the benefit of having a half of a staff member's funding. So, I mean, you could just take out, what would that be? 2/3 of that, and then reallocate it to staffing for the fire department. I'm not saying to do that. I'm just saying.
Remember, animals have to be fed every day,
Well,
cared
that's a good
for
point.
7 days a week,
But I think that's
and you've got to pay somebody to do that.
right. But I think that if we're going to consider doing away with it altogether without having any plan in place at all, it'd be better to do something like that versus.
I'm not recommending until we have a plan.
Well, I would agree with that.
I would prefer us to go ahead and pass this budget, and if somebody comes forth with a plan, then we can deal with it. At that time, we can always amend the budget, and that has been done. And if we have to appropriate money, we've got money where we can appropriate. But once that money's spent, it's not going to be replaced. We have to remember that. There's no extra revenue coming in. So, with that being said, yes, Mr.
I've got a
Ishmael.
question that's not about animal control. On this here that you gave us, potential budget issues,
Yes,
I was reading through number 6, the repairs for base art. I understand we have that leased with SID, correct?
yeah.
So are we responsible for all the repairs? Is that part of the lease?
They've been down there and looked at it, and they said they're going to get bids on that, correct? I'm concerned about who the bid may be awarded to.
Well, my
I'm not going to
question-
get into that, but I'd be willing to share the cost to make sure it's done right, to get the right contractor doing the work.
So SID has, okay. I just wanted to make sure, because I didn't know if we were responsible for that. 'Cause I've never
We've been
seen the
having,
lease.
previously, we've been having to do all of
Okay.
improvements and repairs around there.
Yeah, we put
Correct.
air conditioning.
Yeah, so the volunteer firefighters, they went in there and painted, the stations and did some stuff, but I think the structural aspect of those stations is essentially the way it was when they were built, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so, and that's whenever that was. Do you want
I have
to
another.
do this tonight,
Do what?
pass this budget tonight?
I mean, I have another question.
Yes.
And it is about animal control, I'm sorry. So, a 501c, that's the term, correct?
Yeah.
I'm truly ignorant on that. A 501c comes and is interested in it, and we say that, okay, we're gonna amend this budget and go through that path. How smooth of a transition can that be?
You don't know until they present their plan.
Okay,
You don't know
I would
how
say, I'd say in
players-
crossing that bridge, it's not gonna be smooth.
okay. So, and
And if I start getting phone calls, I'll direct them.
it's
to-
gonna be smoother than us saying we're
I
not
hope
doing
it
animal
is, but
control,
you have the issue of who owns the property,
okay.
and you gotta realize the amount of investment that we put into it in terms of repairs and additions to the property. And, I'm not sure about the legality, and our city attorney's not here tonight because of personal reasons, but whether what we own can be gifted.
Well, my question is, let's say that we do wait until an organization comes forward and says that they would be willing to do this. Is there a 6-month period where we don't have animal control in the village, or is that?
No, we're gonna continue until that.
Until
we
they
we
can pick it
turn
up.
that over.
Okay, that's,
Yeah.
that-
Otherwise, they'll be calling I'll tell them to call you or
No,
Chuck.
don't call me.
Well, and also have to
But
remember,
there's no reason we can't still have an animal control officer, we just don't need a facility. An animal control officer can still take care of unreasonable animals like they were supposed to do in the first place, not be a haven for everybody's stray cat.
Well, they're not doing that now.
Well, I know that because they got good leadership on them.
Anyway. Approving the
Any
budget.
other questions?
I make a motion that we table this until the full meeting, so the rest of us, not me.
Well, they're all here.
I like the budget, but, so people can sit there and ponder it and think about what has happened tonight. And, I honestly, for myself, see no other questions other than the animal control one that was brought up, which is an interesting way to look at it. And they gotta ask people in your ward what they think. What do they prefer? Where do they want to put the money? We have a couple weeks to do that.
I don't
Other than that,
think, Mr. Martin, tabling it to the regular council meeting is going to resolve anything.
But it gives everybody a chance to look in and ask the question. We brought up an interesting question tonight about animal control. They can go out and see what their constituents would like them to do. And
Excuse me, there's still time to do that. I mean, if you're going to amend the budget, I prefer to take care of this tonight instead of dragging it out.
Well, I'm going to vote no if it's tonight.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, can anybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
I motion that we pass the budget as it is, with the opportunity that we can make amendments going forward after we hear what our constituents have to say.
Second.
You have two amendments on the floor.
I motion.
Now, I hear what you're saying, Rob, but Mr. Martin put his motion on the floor first.
We have a motion.
The question is whether or not we have a second to Mr. Martin's motion.
Okay, proceed.
Is there a second for tabling? Hearing none, that motion is dead. Now,
Go ahead, Rob.
I would like to make the motion that we approve the budget as it is, with the opportunity of going forward and making changes if our constituents feel that there are other options.
I would second that motion.
okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the budget as is. If that's the case, then let me give a copy of this. Pass that down and I'll give you one.
Oh, and I apologize, Rob.
Mr.
You
Martin,
may not-
could you come up and get two of these?
You may
please?
not be aware there are some potential budget issues. Is that what you were wanting?
He's got a
Oh,
copy.
okay, he's got a copy.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, were you wanting to consider those this evening?
Huh?
These, or was there?
He's got a
something?
copy of that.
Oh, okay.
Here. Oh. Give that to the clerk, would you please?
Rob, the mayor has passed out a resolution.
This is a resolution regarding adopting the budget, and I'll go ahead and read this for you and save the clerk some trouble. A resolution to adopt the annual operating budget for the city of Cherokee Village, whereas the city of Cherokee Village is mandated by state statute to have an annual budget established by February 1, 2022, and whereas in order to appropriate funds for the city's general operation, and whereas the city must engage in financial transactions during each calendar year, and whereas the annual budget from time to time is subject to amendment, and whereas the annual budget is subject to review for legislative audit, and whereas the requirement set forth in Section 4 of Ordinance 2015-3 is partially waived, with a percentage determined for the annual budget when submitted for approval. Thus now, therefore, it be it resolved by the City Council of Cherokee Village, Arkansas, with the concurrence of the mayor, the City Council of the Cherokee Village adopts the 2022 budget with the following addendum. Any line item expenditure exceeding the budget amount or an expenditure resulting in a department being over budget must have prior approval of the mayor. Any appropriations to supplement the operational budget of a city department must be approved by the City Council. passed and approved as Cherokee Village City Council, date, signed, and so on and so on. That's the resolution. We have a motion and second on the floor. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Martin.
Abstain.
Smith.
Rob?
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Ishmael.
Yes.
Heffley.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Crispy.
No.
Rowland.
Pamela?
I'm gonna have to vote no, and it's not because I don't want to pass the budget, but it is because I don't feel like we have looked and exhausted all efforts with the budget. So I'm a no.
5 yeses, 3 noes, and 1 abstain.
Okay. Motion's approved then. This will be our operating budget until so amended. And as for the issue of the animal control, I think we need to wait and see if someone will come forth and make a proposal. And hopefully there might be some revenue changes and we can restore an employee. I'm not going to say 2, but maybe we can restore 1
But you
for
must remember,
2022.
Mayor, these are the people I gotta go out and try and sell you sales tax.
You're going to have to, when you're talking to me,
These are the people I have to go try and sell you sales tax to, and if they feel we haven't done our job at this particular moment in time to take care of them, then they might not be for it, and nobody likes a tax. So
well,
it's gonna have to be,
we've cut services and our personnel. We haven't cut services necessarily, but we've cut personnel. We've cut about as deep as we can cut.
I understand. I'm just saying that it might be a tough sell.
Oh, I think it'll be a tough sell because of the attitude about taxes anyway.
You're probably right.
Yeah, so.
Mayor,
Since,
as far as the animal control thing, you made statements about waiting until someone comes forward. Is this something that we could put together saying that we're looking for proposals from outside sources? If we put that online or present that out to the public?
that's a change in policy. We can put that on the agenda for the meeting on the 16th. This is a single item, agenda item, so we can't do it tonight. But we would need a vote of the council.
Is it a motion?
We can't do anything with that tonight. I'll just make sure it's on the agenda for the 16th.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, and we can act on it at that time.
Then can I make a motion to adjourn?
We have a motion on the floor to adjourn. Here a second.
Second.
Motion was Christopher for second.
Were
Motion.
you going to take any comments from the audience?
Well, I guess I'm sorry. I guess we need to do that. Any comments from the audience on that city-related items? Not really.
Sorry.
We're adjourned.